Genesis 1, verse 2. Hede gain ein auratas kai akataskuastas, kai skatas epanotes abusu, kai pneuma theu epipherata epano tu hudatas. Let's start with this first line. Notice that the de here is pointing us back to 1:1. And in verse 1, the writer, Moses, had established that God created the heavens and the earth. So we're now picking up with earth here. And our first verb is ein. Notice this is a third singular imperfect active or middle indicative from me. This is establishing a background kind of situation, telling us what was the earth like at the very beginning. And there are two descriptors here, aoritas and akataskuastas. Those are a bit of a mouthful. Somewhat famously, the underlying Hebrew is tohu vabohu, and there's debate about what exactly those mean, but often the translators will say something like formless and void. Here, aoritas actually means invisible. You'll notice that horao is kind of under the hood with the alpha on the front end, so it's unseen or invisible. And then skuastas or kataskuastas typically means formed, and so with the alpha on the front end, it's unformed. So here, the earth was invisible and unformed, which is a pretty close rendering of the Hebrew, although I find the invisible bit quite interesting. Next, we have the noun skatos, which means darkness, and we'll see that a couple times in Genesis 1, with a preposition epano, followed by the genitive here. Epano means upon or over. And the next noun is abusu, in the genitive because of the preposition. Abusas means the deeps, or something to that effect. The Hebrew is tahum, means about the same thing. So the depths of primordial existence. Then what's happening is the Spirit of God is epipherata, and that's from epiphero, or I love the Hebrew there is merakephet. This is a third singular. You see the middle ending there, imperfect middle indicative. Notice that both of our verbs are imperfective, and that's going to come into play for the next verse, where we're going to move things forward with perfective verbs. And so this is going to be something like to bear upon. It's a bit difficult to translate, actually. The underlying Hebrew also is somewhat difficult, this merakephet, which means to hover or to stir upon. And notice you have a repetition of that preposition. It's hovering. The Spirit is bearing upon the water. Now, this is subtly engaged, in my opinion, in Colossians 1:16. Paul here is describing creation, and he's describing Jesus' preeminence. So in him was created. If you remember from the prior verse, one of the options in some of the manuscripts of Genesis 1:1 is katizo, which means to create. The main option is poieon. So maybe Paul's picking up on that. He says all things, and notice the repetition of heaven and earth from Genesis 1:1. But here's what I want to focus on. Visible and invisible. I would argue that this aoratas here is referring back to this exact same descriptor that is used in Genesis 1:2, describing the invisible things at creation. So I think Paul here is making a subtle nod both to Genesis 1:2, but here with the invisible word, he's also pointing at Genesis 1:2.